I need to head to the office, honey. Big emergency, David whispered, leaning over to kiss my forehead as I pretended to sleep. I'll be back before dinner. From our bedroom window, I watched him slide into his BMW, but he didn't turn toward downtown Seattle. Instead, he headed north, just like he had the past 3 Sundays. I picked up my phone and opened the tracking app, the one I'd installed during his last working weekend. As Chief Information Security Officer at one of Seattle's largest tech firms, I had tools and skills that David never knew about. I watched the little blue dot on my screen move steadily toward the Four Seasons Hotel, where his corporate card would soon be charged for another expensive breakfast for 2. The past 3 months had been a masterclass in deception, not from David, who was about as subtle as a bull in a china shop, but from me. Every emergency at work had been documented. Every hotel receipt had been logged. And every meeting with Sarah, his new marketing consultant from our biggest competitor, had been carefully photographed. I sat down at my desk and opened my special file labeled Project Phoenix. Inside were folders of evidence I'd collected. Screenshots of his text messages with Sarah, security camera footage from the hotel lobby, and most importantly, audio recordings of their conversations about our company's confidential projects. Working in cybersecurity had taught me patience. While David spent his Sundays with Sarah, I spent mine building an airtight case. Not just for divorce, that would be too simple. No, David had made a fatal mistake by mixing pleasure with business. Every time he bragged to Sarah about upcoming product launches or merger plans, he violated his non-disclosure agreement. My phone buzzed. It was Elena, our company's lead counsel and my closest friend since college. Just reviewed the files you sent, she said. The board's going to have a field day with this. How soon do you want to move? I glanced at my calendar, where next Thursday was circled in red. Our quarterly board meeting, where David was scheduled to present his department's strategic plan. The same plan he'd been discussing in detail with Sarah over champagne brunches. Thursday's perfect, I replied. Has Sarah's company submitted their competing bid yet? Landed on the CEO's desk yesterday, Elena confirmed. Amazing how similar it is to our confidential strategy, isn't it? I smiled, remembering how David always underestimated me. He thought I was just the tech girl who got lucky with a promotion. He had no idea that I'd been 3 steps ahead of him since the day I spotted that first suspicious text message. One more thing, Elena added. Security's been officially notified to expect some technical difficulties with David's access cards on Thursday morning. You know, random system glitch. He'll have to check in through the main lobby, where the entire board will be gathering for the morning meeting, I finished. What an unfortunate coincidence. I pulled up the hotel receipt from my printer, this morning's evidence. The $287 charge for breakfast would be the last corporate expense David would ever file. I'd let him enjoy his overpriced eggs Benedict. Soon enough, he'd be choking on something far more expensive, consequences. The next few days passed in a carefully choreographed dance. I maintained my usual routine, leaving for work early, kissing David goodbye, playing the role of the devoted wife. Meanwhile, Elena orchestrated the final pieces of our plan. Tuesday evening, David came home later than usual, reeking of expensive perfume and guilt. Rough day at the office, honey? I asked, serving his favorite lasagna. You seem tense. Just this upcoming board presentation, he mumbled, loosening his tie. Lot riding on it. I'm sure Sarah's been helping you prepare, I said casually, watching his fork freeze halfway to his mouth. She seems very dedicated to your success. His recovery was almost impressive. Sarah? Oh, the marketing consultant. Yeah, she's been useful. He forced a laugh. Didn't realize you knew about her involvement. I make it my business to know everything that affects our company's security, I replied with a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. Information is my specialty, after all. That night, I lay awake listening to him send messages on his silent phone. The soft blue glow illuminated his face as he typed, probably warning Sarah about my comment. Little did he know, every word they exchanged was being automatically forwarded to my secure server. Wednesday morning brought the first ripple of unease to David's confident facade. His meeting with the CEO was unexpectedly cancelled. His afternoon conference call was mysteriously rescheduled. Small inconveniences that I'd arranged to keep him off balance. By Wednesday evening, Sarah had sent him 17 increasingly panicked messages. Their competing bid had been flagged for unusual similarities to our internal strategy. The board was asking questions. David spent dinner picking at his food, his face pale beneath his expensive tan. Thursday morning arrived bright and clear. I left early as usual, but today I headed straight to the executive conference room. Elena was already there, arranging folders at each board member's place. "Everything set?" I asked, helping her distribute water bottles and coffee. "Security's ready," she confirmed. "Sarah arrived 10 minutes ago. She's waiting in the lobby as requested. Thinks she's here to sign the final consulting contract." Elena's smile was razor-sharp. "The SEC investigators are in the side office. They're particularly interested in the timing of David's recent stock trades." I checked my watch. 8:45 a.m. David would be arriving soon, expecting to give his triumphant presentation. Instead, he'd walk into a carefully laid trap 5 months in the making. "One last thing," Elena said, handing me a thick envelope. "The divorce papers are ready. Would you like them served before or after the board reveals their knowledge of his corporate espionage?" Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. Security's message was brief. "Target has entered the building. Proceeding as planned." I smoothed my skirt and took my seat at the board table. Years of handling cybersecurity crises had taught me to remain calm in any situation. Today would test that skill like never before. "Let the show begin," I murmured, opening my laptop to display the evidence I'd gathered. On my screen, security footage showed David approaching the lobby, Sarah rising to meet him. In 3 minutes, they'd both be escorted up to this room, where 12 board members, 2 SEC investigators, and one very prepared soon-to-be ex-wife awaited. The look on David's face when he entered the boardroom was worth every sleepless night of the past 5 months. His confident smile faltered as he saw Sarah already seated, not beside him where she presumably expected to be, but in a chair against the wall, flanked by 2 security officers. Her makeup couldn't hide how pale she'd become. "David, Sarah, thank you for joining us," our CEO Richard Matthews began, his tone carrying the same warmth as a glacier. "We thought it would be efficient to combine several meetings into one this morning." David's eyes darted around the room, lingering for a moment on the 2 unfamiliar faces, the SEC investigators, before finally landing on me. I saw the exact moment realization began to dawn in his eyes. "Before you begin your presentation," Richard continued, "we have some questions about the remarkable similarities between our strategic plan and the competing bid submitted by Sarah's firm." He slid a document across the table. "Perhaps you could explain this section, which matches our confidential projections word for word?" David's hands shook as he reached for the paper. There must be some mistake." "No mistake," I said, standing up. My voice was steady as I clicked through a series of screenshots on the main display screen. "These are text messages between you and Sarah discussing our proprietary information. And these," another click, "are recordings from your meetings at the Four Seasons, where you shared details about our upcoming product launch." Sarah let out a small gasp. David's face flushed red. "You spied on me?" Actually, Elena cut in. As Chief Information Security Officer, she was doing her job. Monitoring and investigating potential security breaches is literally her responsibility. The fact that the breach happened to involve her husband is unfortunate. I pulled up the next set of evidence: David's corporate card statements, his access logs, and timestamps of data transfers from his laptop to Sarah's company's servers. While the corporate espionage is our primary concern, one of the SEC investigators spoke up, "We're also very interested in the timing of Mr. Walker's recent stock transactions, particularly those that occurred immediately after his meetings with Ms. Chen." David's lawyer mask finally cracked. "I want to call my attorney." "Of course," Richard nodded. Though you should know that our security team has already provided copies of all this evidence to the SEC, the FBI's Corporate Fraud Division, and the District Attorney's Office. I opened the thick envelope Elena had given me earlier. And David? While you're calling your attorney, I slid the divorce papers across the table. You might want to have them look these over as well. You can't do this, he whispered, his voice breaking. Everything I did for us. For our future. No, David, I replied, standing up to gather my things. Everything you did for yourself. And now you've lost everything. Your job, your reputation, and your wife. All because you couldn't keep your secrets or your promises. As I walked toward the door, I paused beside Sarah. Oh, and one more thing. That consulting contract you came to sign? It's been canceled. I suspect your own board will be having a similar meeting very soon. Elena fell into step beside me as we left the room. Behind us, we could hear David arguing with the SEC investigators, his voice getting more desperate by the second. You know, Elena said as we waited for the elevator, I never liked him. Even at your wedding, I thought you could do better. I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in months. Sometimes you have to let karma do its job. I just helped speed up the process a little. Drinks tonight? She asked. We should celebrate. Absolutely. But first, I need to stop by the real estate agent's office. That beachfront condo I've had my eye on? I think I can afford it now that David's assets are frozen. The elevator doors opened to the lobby, where a small group of reporters had already gathered. Apparently, news of a corporate espionage scandal travels fast. Ready to face the press? Elena asked. I straightened my shoulders and lifted my chin. I've been ready for this moment for 5 months. Let's give them a story they'll never forget. The next few weeks unfolded like a perfectly executed program, each event triggering exactly the response I'd anticipated. By Friday morning, both David and Sarah had been formally charged with corporate espionage. Their mugshots made the front page of the Seattle Times, alongside a surprisingly flattering photo of me leaving the courthouse. The headline read, Tech Executive's Double Life Exposed by Security Chief Wife. My phone hadn't stopped ringing since the story broke. 3 major tech companies had already reached out with job offers, impressed by how I'd handled the security breach. 2 publishing houses wanted book deals. Even Netflix was interested in the rights to my story. But the most satisfying call came from David's mother. I always knew he wasn't good enough for you, Margaret said, her usual sharp tone softened by genuine concern. I've already taken him out of my will. The lake house that you loved so much? It's yours now. I had the papers drawn up yesterday. I hadn't expected that. Margaret had always been more of a mother to me than my own, and the thought of losing her had been one of my few regrets about exposing David. The aftermath at work was equally dramatic. Our stock price actually went up after the scandal broke, with investors impressed by how quickly and decisively we'd handled the security breach. Richard, our CEO, called me into his office the following Monday. The board has been discussing your handling of this situation, he began, gesturing for me to sit. We're creating a new position, Chief Risk and Security Officer. Double your current salary, direct report to me, and a seat on the board. Interested? I thought about David, sitting in his jail cell waiting for his parents to post his $2 million bail. About Sarah, whose company had not only fired her but was suing her for damages. About all the times David had patronizingly explained my own job to me at dinner parties. When do I start? I asked. Immediately. And your first task is to completely overhaul our security protocols. Obviously, the current ones had some personal advantages, but we need something more comprehensive. I spent that evening in my new condo, watching the sunset over the Pacific through floor-to-ceiling windows. Elena came over with champagne and Chinese takeout, just like in our college days. Did you see David's lawyer's statement? She asked, scrolling through her phone. Mr. Walker maintains his innocence and claims he was set up by his vindictive wife. As if you needed to set him up. He did all the work himself. I laughed, thinking of the video footage I had of David literally handing Sarah confidential documents. His lawyer's going to have fun explaining that one to a jury. Speaking of jury, Elena set down her champagne glass. The DA wants to know if you'll testify. They're offering David and Sarah a plea deal, but only if they both take it. Want to bet on who cracks first? Sarah, I said without hesitation. She's already lost her job, her reputation, and her freedom. She's not going to lose years of her life protecting David too. Especially once she realizes he was also feeding information to her biggest competitor. Elena's eyebrows shot up. He was what? Oh yes, I smiled, reaching for my laptop. Would you like to see the evidence I didn't give to the SEC? I've been saving it for the civil suit. As I pulled up the files, my phone buzzed with a text from Margaret. The lake house is ready whenever you want it. And dear, I've set up a trust fund for you. Consider it compensation for putting up with my son for 7 years. I showed Elena the message. Want to help me furnish a lake house next weekend? Obviously. But first, she refilled our glasses. Tell me about this other evidence. I want to know everything. Outside, the Seattle skyline glittered against the darkening sky. Somewhere in that city, David was probably still trying to figure out exactly how his perfect plan had fallen apart. He never did understand that in chess, like in life, the queen is the most powerful piece on the board.